Mrs. Johnston, and for today's lesson, we are going to work on sequencing the events of today's story. The images that I'm going to show you are going to tell parts of the legend of George Washington and the cherry tree. Can you tell me what a legend is? Did you remember and say, a legend is a story that mixes together truth and made up events? Even though George Washington never actually cut down his father's cherry tree and then honestly admitted to it, he really lived and was known to be a very honest man. After today's sequencing events with Mrs. Johnston, you are going to complete activity page 2.1, where you have to draw a picture of the beginning of the story, the middle of the story, and the end of the story. So be careful, pay close attention to our retell, our sequencing. I am going to start with this image. Looking at this image, this was the beginning of the story. Augustine Washington and his son George were on their farm, and Augustine was telling George about his cherry trees and how important they were, and how to care for them, make them grow tall, and live long. Our next picture happened the next day, and Augustine Washington and his foreman were outside walking the cherry field or the cherry orchard, and they came across a cherry tree that had been chopped down. And Augustine Washington knew exactly that this had been done intentionally because the cherry tree was cut with precision. He knew that an animal could not have done that. And in the background, you see Curious George eavesdropping on his dad, Augustine, and the foreman. Our next picture shows young George walking up to his father, Augustine Washington, and explaining to him that he was sorry that he cut down the cherry tree. He was honest and he was ready to accept the punishment for cutting down the tree. The foreman in the back, I remembered in the story, made the comment that he was glad he was not in George's shoes right now because he knew how much Augustine Washington cared about his cherry trees and that he was disappointed and angry. Augustine Washington told George that although he did not appreciate him cutting down the cherry tree, he did appreciate him being honest, and that if he promised never to cut down another cherry tree, he would not be punished. Mrs. Johnston looked at the pictures. I told the people that I saw in the picture, and I looked at the details in the picture to tell the remainder of the story. I did not read the story word for word again. Mrs. Johnston used her own words to retell the story. I look forward to seeing your drawings of the beginning, middle, and end of our story and hearing your words to describe those parts.